everyone, it's Tonya, and I had a few people ask me how I made the flower that is on here, and I have showed this in another video, but they really want to see how I do the coloring. So I'm going to show you how I do the coloring on this. What I start out with is I have this mustard yellow or mustard seed distress ink. And I always start out when I'm making flowers, the base flower is always either white or a buff tan color. And the reason for that is that those colors will not, sorry I bumped the camera there, they will not compete with whatever color I'm adding. But by all means, if you wanted like a pink flower, you could start out with your base being pink. Just don't make it a huge bright pink unless your flower is supposed to be a bright pink, if you know what I mean. So what I do is basically I start out with whatever my lighter color is, and from the center of the flower, now every flower is different because sometimes I want the dark part to be on the tip and sometimes I want it to be towards the center. So I start out with my base color that I want, and this one is going to be yellow, and it is going to be my lightest color, so I don't want to I want to put it on first. And then as you can tell, I'm barely putting any on. And then I'm also going to do the back side. Now it's very important if you're doing dimensional flowers to do both sides if you're inking, and the reason I do that is because you may be able to see it from both sides, especially when you start to bend or fold the flower. And guys, these techniques for painting these flowers are not unique to me. This is just basic 101 art class. Start out with your base tone. Then the next color that I'm going to apply to these is going to be the Wild Honey Distress Ink, because it has an orange base. But this time, instead of using the actual applicator tool, I'm using the pad. But this tool will end up leaving me squared off edges, and I don't want that look. So what I'm going to do is I can control this pad a little bit better in my hand. I can roll it around my finger if I just, you know, use just the pad. And I'm going to start from the center this time and come up the leaf like this. See, I'm just touching it and dragging it up. Touch and drag up. And if you don't cover it completely with color, like right in here, don't worry about that, because one, no flower is perfect, and those imperfections make it look more realistic. And if you completely saturate it with color, then it's not going to look nice. And I'm just going to turn and pull up, turn and pull up. Very light hint of color. And two, when I'm doing the one that I'm working on, I'm usually hitting the one next to it too. So not on purpose, but it just happens that way. Okay, so I'm going to go around in that circle motion a couple of times and see how now it's starting to get a little depth to it. Flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing on the back. So I'm taking and doing the same motion on the back where I'm dragging that color up that leaf. Just barely giving it color. See that? Okay, still not finished because there's still more that has to happen. But before I can do the next step, I need to shape my flower. So what I have is, this is just a piece of fun foam, and I cut it down to a small piece, and it's the really thick one. And I know I've showed you guys how to do this before. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the broader tip of a stylus, and I'm going to trace around the outer edge of these petals. Now on the Tim Holtz die, you have to be very careful because it will rip. And see how it's kind of got that pucker right here, and then I'm going to push straight up the center, but only about halfway. I'm going to repeat that process on all of the petals. So I'm going to fast forward the tape while I do that. So now I'm going to flip the flower over, and in the center here I'm going to just draw a circular motion right here around the center, and see how that starts to pop that daisy up just a little bit. And I'm breaking those fibers down, really popping that up. But now what I want to do is I'm going to take a pad that has brown on it, and I'm not going to re-ink it, because all I really want to do is bring up those high points that I just made when I used my stylus. I don't want a lot of brown in here, and if I were to re-ink this, then I would get saturated color and it wouldn't be realistic looking. I just want to barely tap and bring those highlights forward. If for some reason you do need to resaturate the ink on your pad here, then what I recommend doing is taking the brown, the desired brown color, I'm going to use Vintage Photo or Walnut Stain, patting it down on your pad, blotting it off on a piece of paper or your mat, and then try and do it. And see, that just adds, and I'm going to show you the difference here, that just adds just a pop of color to the tips, and it really brings out those highlights. And that, my friend, is how I color in my daisies. And then you just create the centers. Now, just with the centers, what I did was I painted them with this walnut stain, which before I had the walnut stain, I just used an ink pad. Again, their core is the manila color as well. And I just got this smooch that is the brown smooch and has gold in it. And I really like how that sparkles, but it might be a bit much. I don't know, but I'm going to try it. So basically what I do with it is I take a pair of scissors. I've already showed you guys this in another video, but just for purposes of having this finished. All I'm going to do is do slits of this, and I'm cutting 3 slits per petal. And this punch is the hydrangea punch from Martha Stewart. It's the large one. The daisy is the Tim Holtz daisy, but you could use the Sizzix one too. And I noticed yesterday when I was looking at Sizzix.com that they have a daisy that is very similar. It's a little bit smaller, but it's very similar to the Tim Holtz one. Then I'm going to take, and I don't want to use this stylus because it's too narrow, so I'm going to take a pin back. As long as it's round, it'll be fine. It doesn't matter what kind of pin. And I'm just going to start in the center, and I'm going to push towards the outside, and I'm going to rock to the other side, push to the outside, and I'm going to follow those petals all the way around, just rocking back and forth until that comes up into a cupping position. And that's what it looks like. And I'm going to repeat this process right here. I'm going to pull these all up, kind of glue them together, put another one around it, another one around it, 3 or 4 times until I have the desired thickness that I want. And then it's going to go right here into the center of my daisy. Now, on the daisies, I layer 4 of these cuts on a daisy to have it finished. And so that's what it turns out looking like. Once it's all together, or the center part is all together, I will go back and just hit the tips with the dark walnut stain, just to kind of give a little more definition to the very tips. But other than that, that's how I do my daisies. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any more questions.